Hello.
Victor, good morning.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
Yes, same to you. Same to you. You're having your Friday morning walk.
Uh, yes, I will show you. It's not much, but it's super green and it's quiet and it's me and the birds.
Wonderful.
So
Sweet.
yeah. I've actually found that I am much better on walking conversations because if I'm in front of my computer, I'm tempted to look at chat or some notification comes up or whatever. Here, it's just the forest, you and us, you and me.
You have to watch that you don't step into a hole and twist your ankle. That's it.
Yeah, which is a good kind of attention, and it still lets me focus on what you're saying much better than trying to actively ignore distractions on 16 chat channels.
Yeah, that's good. Hope you can bring that discipline back to your office space as well. This world of multitasking is what's eating us from the inside. So I've never used notifications, and I try to, I don't know, try to do my best to stay focused, let's say. So it's good that you found a hack for that as well.
Great. Guys, sorry I'm 1 minute late. I see that you already started. I was
No,
so happy. I was so happy to see you both, and I was really so excited to meet with Markus on Monday, and it was like really amazing start of the week because it showed me, wow, I must have evolved since I'm having conversations with such people. I was really proud. And yeah, I saw so many connections with what you were saying and what Victor does. I've been working with Victor quite intensively since March, was it? I think when the coherence started. And yeah, I just felt like I would like you to get to know one another, and that I also would like to be in the room. Maybe I would ask some question here and there. So yeah, I don't have really. I guess you might have some questions to one another, so I will just leave it for you.
Thank you, Alex. That's wonderful. And Victor, I should say before we begin that we're in a number of groups together, and your comments have always piqued my interest. And in many of these, I've just kind of more been observing and waiting for the right time. And as it always happens, the right time pops up in a way that you can't really anticipate from the beginning. So thank you, Alex, for taking this initiative. And I suppose it is the right time for us to meet properly. So.
Wonderful. So how shall we begin? Do you want to share a bit, maybe where your idea space is at, what you're working on, what are you excited about?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, I can't really talk about my present situation without making some reference to, let's say, where I come from and the kind of deeper issues that drive me, let's say. So if you'll forgive me for going into a little bit of detail, I'll give you the kind of lay of the land, so to speak.
We'd love to hear about your journey.
Okay. Well, I'll start from the beginning. I'm Finnish Canadian. I was born in Canada in deep nature. We had a lifestyle farm with my family until I was around 10 or 11. So we had our own.
What about?
In northern Ontario. It's about 4 hours north of Toronto, just on the edge of civilization. So pretty well after that, you go farther north and there's no people, and it's we're right at the edge of that, let's say. So
Right.
kind of tension of.
I grew up in the 80s in Toronto, and I finished University of Waterloo, and my MBA is from McGill. But
Okay,
you reminded me of a quote. It was some kind of radio show or something from the north, and they're like, "It's not the end of the world here, but you can see it from here."
It's exactly that. So when I was young, this kind of, I don't know, connection to no man's land. My dad, we used to have a huge piece of land, millions of square meters, and he'd take me to the top part on the land. It would just be this endless forest of trees and, nothingness. And he'd say, yeah, that's no man's land. Never go there. So, of course, I did. When I was young, I used to mountain bike, 30 kilometers into nothingness, and I was chased by bears, wolves. I've lived.
I was going to say, that was my question. Have you actually ever seen a bear?
Oh, yeah, many times. So we still have an island just outside of Killarney, just on the lake of Georgian Bay Lake Huron. So I go back there every summer for my retreat for a couple of months and barefoot.
Where are you based now?
I live in Istanbul, in Turkey.
Istanbul. Okay.
Yeah. So I've been here for 26 years. So anyway, long story short, this kind of Canadian aspect of myself is something that, I escaped when I was 20, and I've been living London, New York, all around the world, everywhere since then. Here now for 26 years.
High five to escaped Canucks. Yes.
Well, this idea of nothingness, it really terrified the hell out of me. So, I mean, I just wanted to understand how the rest of the world worked, but now that I've got a little bit of a footing into that, I'm 52 years old nearly right now. This idea of nature, for the past at least 10 or 15 years or so has been also creeping back into me. And I realized that everything I've ever done has always gone back to that, how to kind of recreate this connection with, number one, nature, but also the way I grew up, the people around us, the community. Everybody was, I'm
Oh,
finished.
wait, the call to prayer, the call to prayer. Let us listen.
It's a little bit in the distance, but the wind is just right. So yeah, listen.
Love that, because when I was a kid, when I was 9 years old, we moved to Kuwait from socialist Poland to Kuwait. So like super exotic. And this is 82, right? So I have like, it always brings me back to those memories, the call to prayer. I love it.
Yeah, well, that's another rabbit hole to go down for sure. I'll keep my comments to that limited. But yeah, thanks for that reminder as well. When you hear it 5 times a day, it's sometimes distracting or sometimes completely passive that you don't even realize that it's going on. So very nice to look at the world from beginner's eyes again and to hear these things. It's always very nice. So anyway, yeah, I studied law. I'm a lawyer by training. Then I did my master's in international relations. I was hoping and planning in my earlier career to be a lawyer in the UN. That didn't happen as planned. I worked in management consultancy, investment banking, all kinds of, financial industries. Then I got involved in real estate when I first moved to Turkey, kind of by accident, more as a kind of IPO advisor for the launch of a fund. But that led me down the path of I don't know, becoming a developer. So I professionally worked on many projects that are, let's say, game changing. And if you look at them in total, I've probably touched hundreds of millions of people coming through the projects I've done over the past 15 years and 15 or 20 years now in 15 different countries. So the idea of how to build, and the kind of core theme of all those projects has always been, that it should have a purpose to be built. It's never been just for the sake of building for the sake of making money, but, building with purpose, of course, within the limitations of everybody's view of what that is, let's say. So more and more, we focus on our own projects, and I don't know, I consult still on quite a number of different projects, let's say, as kind of vision maker for projects. So I'd come in before architects, and I designed the kind of philosophy of the project and the kind of, I wouldn't say just targets, but just the kind of whole path from A to Z. I've had the experience of taking many projects right from an idea stage all the way through to operating, setting up operating companies and running them. So in that process, you understand the linkages between things, and you can see quite far, let's put it this way, and understand what are the potential ways that things might mutate through the process and how to best design for a clear copy. And, a kind of stage for people to experience life in a more beautiful way. That's always been my driver from that. And then, I don't know, in about 2000, first I left my kind of professional role in 2007. I set up my own company with an architect. So we still have that company today. It's called Urbanista, which is a kind of design and development company. And we're working on some projects which I'll talk to you about later, some of which you might be interested to be involved with somehow as well. I don't know, and as a result of all the different crises taking place in Turkey, in 2013, I had 100 people on my payroll, and, we had a lot of projects on the go. And then Gezi Park, I don't know if you remember this story in Turkey, but the kind of first challenge to the existing system took place, and everything stopped.
From all of the protests and all of this is the one that say I have an artistic soul. The guy who just stood there looking at the portrait, and then more and more people lined up behind him, just like the completely active. But you know what I'm referring to.
Well, if you're going back to 2013 to the Gezi Park protest, if that's what you're talking about.
I don't know if there's the one. I just remember that there was one part of the one form of the protest where the guy went there and stood staring at the portrait of Ataturk, and then more and more people started lining up behind him, just in silence, standing there looking at the portrait of Ataturk.
Could be. I mean, I don't know that particular aspect, and some of these things are spun by the media in ways that maybe give them, special
and
importance or
things
whatever.
go.
And
But
some of
I just love that because it's protest, completely non-violent, and art, right? Really, a form of performance art. So, but interesting, it didn't register as a big thing in Turkey.
Well, the news has been so suppressed here. The idea of this kind of idea of the media regime and things like this. I used to be a believer in an open media and open press and thought that we had freedom of speech until, it stopped. So, you kind of see what's happening on the ground, and you see the way that it's spun in the local media and the international media. And actually, since 2013, I haven't watched any television or listened to any media whatsoever because it's bullshit. So, that was a big game changer, let's say. Anyway, long story short, all those different pressures made me change my organizational method, let's say. So I had to get rid of all my team, so we kind of changed the approach. And this led to a kind of way that, I still needed people in projects, but I didn't want to hire people anymore. So I set up this kind of, what was the beginnings of maybe co-working, I suppose you could say. So first I started with a smaller office, put some rooms, and I think we lost Victor. Okay, you're back.
Yeah, it just went to driving mode.
Okay, so we started prototyping a new way of being. So I kind of helped many of the people that I truly needed around me to set up their own businesses. We started working kind of business to business with one another. And within a period of time, rather than having 100 people working on the payroll, there was 100 people working in a very, very different way. And we had our own art gallery, music studio, common kitchen, and with this idea of experimenting with different ways of being and kind of combining that with work. So, for our own projects that were existing, we reformatted ourselves in different ways so that we didn't have no employees, but collaborators, and really coming together as teams that support each other. So we started kind of with the orientation of real estate because that was my main business. But now, I don't even have a job in the kind of conventional sense. I just do the things that I'm interested in doing, and, people kind of accumulate around that. So it's been a kind of 10-year journey of really experimenting completely with new ways of interbeing with one another, I would say. So we set up a few different spaces like this, and then with the pandemic and all the different things we went through, the kind of intensity of the operating landscape for us was really, really very challenging. We had bombings very close to our buildings and our offices, and living on the razor's edge the entire time. So just as soon as things start to get cooking and rolling, then there's another shock to the system and earthquakes and you name it. It's not an easy place to be. But what we discovered from all of this is that things don't necessarily need to go underground when shit hits the fan, but they need to behave differently. So we've prototyped, literally probably thousands of different types of projects and ways of being, and how to communicate correctly, and all these human qualities that we never really have a chance to practice because we're just either chasing convenience or we're in the kind of routine. When you break those, new types of forms emerge. So that's been an amazing experience prototyping that, let's say. And then when the pandemic came, we decided to close our spaces. We didn't want to be going around with masks and that. So we've spent the past 5 years figuring out how to do this digitally and kind of in pop-up format without having to have a space, a permanent home, let's say, to do that, which for me has really been kind of amazing because I thought I was always my own boss, but I didn't realize that the spaces I had around me were actually the bosses. So you have to kind of shape yourself according to, the number of square meters you have.
Wow.
This past 5 years has really been liberating in the sense that, now without having something pulling me all the time and telling me that I have to do this to pay the rent, X, Y, Z, different forms also emerge from that. So, I don't know, long story short, this kind of initial experience was called Joint Idea, which still exists, is our kind of main platform, let's say. So we had physical spaces with this name. We also have a kind of education program that we developed from this for corporates for transformation based on our own experiences and our own learnings during that process. So that's called LifeWorks Labs. So from transitioning from your work life to your life work in this kind of laboratory environment, that it's not an academy or university or some kind of, I don't know, we'll give you a certificate of completion. I mean, I don't believe that that's possible. So it's this kind of living dynamic approach to transformation. So we also advise boards, companies, larger companies as well, with all kinds of processes, ranging from agile to communication techniques to team building to all the kind of soft skills which I think are more and more important. As we move into a technological age, how to be human with one another truly is at the kind of core of that. And we have a community called the Love Mafia, which we established also 10 years ago. So how to, have a group of people around us who are truly walking the talk, trying their best to build a world out of love rather than fear. And in the meantime, we've also supported the growth and development of, nearly countless communities, ranging from big organizations that you might know, like Mind Valley and Burning Man and others. We've been local partners with them here for many years, supporting their community building efforts. We've started our own communities, with Rebuild, with all these other groups. I mean, I don't even bring those in yet because they're still in emergence. But the idea of serving other communities selflessly, just as though they're your own, has really been a kind of core learning for me. How to kind of work selflessly to generate your own compassion, and your own sense of compassion and joy is not something that I ever really fully realized until I did it. And now after 10 years, I realized that it's a thing, truly. Anyway, I'll bring this all together now. Our next stages are focused on making our own village. This is kind of really where I'm putting my own real estate efforts and experiences to kind of create a recreative village, rather than just a regenerative village. How we can actually move together to be collaborators with our neighbors and build things and have a productive, not just regenerative economy, but a kind of open-ended space and home for creativity and innovation. So we've had a few start-stop projects on that as well. We've acquired some land and we're waiting for the right time for our own life to enable that to happen. Our kids have grown up to the point where my son just started university in Canada, so we have this kind of empty nest syndrome going on, and our own life has also come to the point where, it's not just a theoretical concept anymore, but we're starting to step into those roles, and others are also starting to follow slowly with no pressure. I mean, I pressured this for so many years because I really wanted to do it, and kind of forced it, and just so many broken dreams on that side that last year I said, I'm not going to push this anymore. I am ready, and whenever the world is ready, then we're going to go. So that's kind of where
Throughout the last 10 years of my life.
Yes, I've been observing that as well. So I'm curious to hear your perspectives on that too. And then there's all this kind of other story of all the research we've done and the kind of experiences we've had. Where does this all lead? So I've been moving forward with this development of this idea called common unity, which is the idea of a community of communities. And I know that many of us in this group are also focused on that. So that's something that's living and being prototyped. And the kind of highest expression of that is this kind of thing which I call X-humanity, which is kind of double X humanity in terms of existential humanity and exponential humanity. So I have the domains and the spaces, let's say, ready for that to be fleshed out. I think that that's really our calling, rather than looking at kind of spirit or God or religion or some kind of thing that we all must serve. How do we bring this into a kind of question format that who are we, where did we come from, and where are we going? This idea of our existential questions, and now with all the layers of climate and AI and you name it on top of that, this kind of field of investigation I think is really important to pose as a question. And then how do we tap into our exponential humanity? We always talk about exponential technology and that changing the world, but nobody really truly thinks that we have this potential that to tap into an exponential side of our own growth of our humanity. So that's kind of what we've been chasing, and I want to somehow massage all of these different layers into a DAO that's collectively owned by everybody, where we don't just talk, but we research and we try to tackle these questions of who are we and where are we going and how do we get there through our humanity versus something else from the outside. So I don't know. I think that's a quick summary of how I look at things, and I can go into much more detail, but I'd also love to hear from you as well.
Very
So I
amazing.
hope, yes, absolutely amazing. I hope you're writing a book.
I am. 3.
I was going to say, I really want to read the book length version of this and watch the movie too. But the book, because, I mean, congratulations, hats off, amazing. At the same time, you really need to share this, right? You really need to share the learnings and the ideas. It's interesting. I've come across a really amazing collective in Japan. Uh, Maybe they don't have quite as much, but it was similar. I think after the 2008 crash, the guy went like he had to fire 30 people or something. It was a creative and strategy agency, and he was like, I don't want employees ever again. And he set up a collective structure. So beautiful. I love the vision. I want to move to your village and definitely many ways collaborate. So I would say, and it's always nice meeting with people with visions, well, in some ways bigger. So where I am at now, after 10 years trying to push the village stuff and really having realized that the financing is not there. So I've had conversations and and definitely I have no doubt that the demand is there. I have no doubt that there is the knowledge out there how to make this happen, because I've talked to those people, I know those people, I've seen those vision documents. But the financing is not there. And for me, because I'm outside of real estate, I didn't really understand that. I'm like, housing. We build millions of units of housing every year. What's the big fucking deal? Just let me build a village in the thing. But I realized that to real estate people, it's like I'm selling zebras to a cow herder. I'm like, look, 4 legs, eats grass. Come on, same thing, mammal. And they're like, it's a zebra. Are you like, right? It's exactly been the feeling because they're cow herders and they know how to deal with cows, urban, clear formats, and the industry is conservative. So there is a huge demand, right, around the world. There is the capacity. I mean, you have to draw on the latest on the right kind of wisdom, bring the right people in the right way. But been thinking about it for so long. But the access to capital is a bit, and building houses, building stuff, you know very well. It costs real money, right? And real money for a village is tens of millions at least, right? So that's why after 10 years of like pushing and this and not seeing, not just myself, if it was only me struggling, be like, okay, easy, what am I doing wrong? Who do I look at that's actually doing it? And how do I learn from them? But everybody is stuck. And it's slowly now some big projects starting to move to people. But yeah, I mean, access to capital, on the one hand, it doesn't seem like so much, you need 10, 20 million, 40 million if it's something bigger. At the same time, if you don't have access to those kinds of people and a reputation, it's really, really hard to get. How does that jive with your thinking on this?
Um, well, for me, it's not so much about the issue of money. I mean, of course, I 100% agree with what you're saying, and money is money, and it's a required input. But I think that for me, the biggest stumbling block to getting this moving has been truly getting the right people with the right amount of money that can be supporters to change their lifestyle and be willing to make a radical shift in the way they perceive what their life is. So how to kind of move from, the convenience of urban living where maybe it's not even so convenient, but you have a certain pattern of living and kind of saying, okay, now let's move somewhere else and begin living a completely different way. That in theory works beautifully, but when it comes down to actually saying, let's start this weekend and go, that's where things stop. Nobody's really ready to make a deep actual change. It's a theoretical change that they love the concept, but when it comes down to actually doing it, nobody's 100% prepared for that. And in my, I don't know, world, I suppose, it's a result of people having kids in school or, some responsibilities that they haven't fully been able to get rid of to enable that change to occur. So I don't know, I would say that the number one thing is the lifestyle driver and the kind of lack of urgency from having it happen right now. I think that if there was a sense of urgency, the money issue could be resolved. And the second issue, I guess, getting these things up and running, as a real estate developer myself, there's certain serious risks you need to take as a developer to get a project mobilized and moving, and handling the money is one of those. But when it comes down to, let's say, a regenerative type of village where it's more about stewardship versus, owning a title deed, and a kind of governance system which may be really restrictive to you and things like this. And I don't know, the third quality there being that how do I relate to my neighbor? We've, as a society, forgotten who our neighbors are. We don't know our neighbors. We don't, we get a little bit nervous when we think, oh, we're going to see the same people every day and we're going to have to interact with them. And where am I going to be located in this thing? And what is my role? And all these, once you unpack it, so many of these things like
Right.
snakes start to kind of, hiss at you. And those are the things you can't 100% plan. So I don't know, it requires a completely different type of development where you make it inclusive to a sense that you kind of community design work and you start building your community truly first, and starting to share the risks and the kind of challenges that you have as a developer, and seeing where people help. Do they serve, do they support, can they actually start handling the kind of conceptualization of it and be excited by that. Like you mentioned yourself, everybody thinks they're an expert at developing a real estate project because it seems so simple and it's so much of that has been done, but there is a professional and artistic side to it that requires experience, for sure. Otherwise, you learn mistakes as you're going, and it can be extremely costly. So it is a work that requires patience, skill, some kind of, I don't know, witchcraft or wizardry as well, which is not something that you can learn without actually doing it. So the money aspect is one thing, how to secure the land, how to actually make it, a comparable asset with others that you might have in a real estate portfolio. Like you said, there are completely different behaviors attached to them. So, but I think that beyond all of that, it's the vague qualities of what kind of lifestyle is this going to be? Am I going to be, some kind of hippie, and after being a businessman in the city, and I have to, change my wardrobe and my behaviors and my words and all these different things. So those are the things that scare people a little bit. And is it a cult? This is another big question. Who is the leader of this village, and who is the the mayor, and how does it get organized, and are you then committed to being there 24/7 and so on and so forth? So
I think it would be great to have a separate visioning session on this, because I hear everything what you're saying. I mean, all of those things are challenges, but I see all of them as solvable problems.
Mhm.
In the sense that the knowledge is out there, the wisdom is out there, facilitating ability is out there. It's just about pulling in the right things at the right time. And for sure, there needs to be a process of community building along the way. At the same time, there's a hard chicken and egg problem, which I've been staring down for a long time. If you don't have land, people are like, show me the land, how much will the houses be, and then I can talk to you. And then I started trying go down the land route, didn't manage to fundraise for it. So got stuck there. It was also too small, right? You need a degree of scale in order to develop enough momentum and robustness. But yeah, I mean, let's have a separate call on that, because I really see that, give me 100,000 in a year for promotion, community building, and I'll find the most amazing people in the world. Because there is the appetite there, and there is a lot of people talking about it, and we can design a step-by-step program to bring people in through events, pop-ups, and so forth, which enable people to engage, comments step by step. Yeah. By the way, did you come up with an answer to the cult question?
Well, the answer, technically is that, if you're able to leave voluntarily, then it's not a cult. This is the kind of classic, approach to that. But I can understand what that is, but most people that have never joined a cult or been a community leader don't really know what all those things mean in practice. And when you're talking about owning real estate and you're, in a situation where you've, gone through those efforts, I mean, you're locked in, and otherwise, so I don't know. It's an unresolved thing to a certain degree. It's not as big of an issue as it used to be, because I think that people sense sincere behavior over time, and those people that have, really relentlessly committed to something over the long term, you don't take on the title of a cult leader. That generally happens for people that pop up not knowing what they're doing, and then they resort to these kind of tribal characteristics because they don't have the experience to push through. So I don't know, it's kind of resolves itself just by good behavior, I would say.
So my answer to that is look at the people, because there's organizations that work on cult deprogramming.
Hmm.
And they actually work with real people that have been in real cults, and they have very clear definitions of what is and is not a cult. I mean, there is, of course, a big gray area because anything you become really engaged with starts, taking you out of your other life. But those organizations have a very sober look at the matter, and it's interesting. All right. So, yeah, I mean, would love to have a separate. By the way, where were you thinking of building it? You're building this in Turkey?
Yeah, we have some first land just about 2 hours away from Istanbul. It's at about 1,700 meters altitude, so it's a kind of alpine location. So, but four seasons at the same time. We have a few projects we've developed in different places is concepts which we decided to pause, let's say. But there's a few design works, and most things are already done for about two or three others, which are also in Turkey. For us, I mean, it's worth mentioning also that my vision is not really to kind of build this independently, that I have strangers living there, living in a village. That for me is not so interesting. What is interesting for me is to have people that I truly love there, that I want to grow old with, that I want to do my life with. So this kind of hand-picked process of we've worked together, we've collaborated before. I don't know, if you're going to go on a boat holiday for a week with people and still be friends, there's a beautiful knowledge that emerges from that. So you say, these are the people that I've stuck, and over the course of now 10, 15 years kind of pursuing this, maybe it's around 80 people that I feel that sense of intimacy and comfort with, to the point that we want to grow old together and take care of each other, that there's also this kind of intergenerational aspect to it, that it's the way that maybe we die. So just this is a kind of place forever, not for strangers, not for people that are not just to do it as a kind of new typology of living, but to kind of scale deeper versus scaling wider. I guess that's for me the kind of driving quality that I've come to also.
Yeah, I wanted you to tell Victor exactly about this scaling deep, because I think Victor had this notion of regenerative scaling, and I was wondering how these two are somehow, what are the similarities and differences?
Well, I don't know. I mean, please, I'd like to hear your answer. So, I mean, kind of bioregional scaling and, regenerative scaling from that perspective is one thing, but in terms of the actual human hearts, let's say, that you can touch, and what is the limit of human love and, I don't know, patience in your 24-hour day, what is the correct number of people? This is a big question. So the issue of scale there for me, is we've always been looking at projects that are, maybe 100 to max, 150 type of people. And less than that probably doesn't give the dynamism that we need to make it interesting on a daily basis, and more than that takes it out of human scale. So I don't know, I'd love to hear your view on that too.
Yeah, so I mean, the idea that I've been working on is how do we take ideas and spread them, right? Because usually scaling means it's a top-down corporate approach, McDonald's, cut and paste, boom, 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 same burger every country. Though actually McDonald's does customize by country, but still, it's a very top-down thing. So we need to spread good ideas quickly, but how do we do it in a way where people get the wisdom, the benefits, and all of this, not having to invest things from scratch themselves, yet do it in such a way that things grow in a way which is locally relevant and locally adapted, right? So if I look at nature around me, all of this, nature is an ultimate copying machine, right? It throws seeds everywhere, but then the seed grows in a way, the same seed can grow into a bonsai or into a mighty oak tree. Same tree, it adjusts to the conditions. So this is what I'm thinking. I'm really interested. So talking a bit more about where I am, because with the villages here, I decided to wait for when things move forward. I am back to my background is in software. So my undergraduate was in software. Then I did an MBA. Spent most of my life, aside from these last 10 years, looking at villages in the software space. and now focusing on how do we build software for the regenerative society. You can think of it as the regenerative society OS. We are at a stage of our development where digital technology is having a bigger and bigger effect in shaping society, right? You can argue that in the 90s, technology was mostly value neutral. You know, you can say that send a hate email or you can send a love email. It's the same email. It really is not a big difference. But clearly, and it's now unequivocal, that social media shapes society. It's affected the political democratic discourse. It's increased suicide rate amongst young women and a million and one other things, which we probably haven't even really realized yet. So the digital technology is really strongly shaping society. And with AI, this is going to be many thousandfold as we enter the societal singularity of the human society becoming one with human intelligence, becoming one with AI intelligence. I think people make a mistake looking at singularity and thinking we'll all be cyborgs, because actually human beings are not individually function units. We function as part of society. And it's very easy to see how teams, organizations, or societies will become one with AI. Already we're one with many technologies. So I really want to work in software and with people who are working on bits and on components of what will become the regenerative society OS. I think it's time. We have the ideas out there. With AI, there is a new wave of technology, so an opportunity to create a strong new narrative. It's clear that Web3 has gotten stuck because they don't have a strong story and it hasn't rolled out in a way where it's impactful to an average person's life. But we can see with AI how rapidly, right? It's the fastest growth adoption rate ever was OpenAI ChatGPT. So within that space, the other idea that I'm working with, and I love that you've been experimenting with organizational forums. I'd love to learn more about what you've tried and so on and so forth. What I am working on trying to develop is the idea of a venture family. So my thesis is that just as humans alone are weak, stupid, and fragile, because we're not designed to be alone, we are designed to live in groups, right? We need family in order to be wiser, to be more stable, healthier, happier, and smarter. So I have this hypothesis that similarly, companies, especially if you're trying to build a regenerative company, need to be part of a family ecosystem as well, and other groups, but need to be part of a family in order to really be strong and thriving. I've seen so many people try and attempt to do Teal. There was the Reinventing Organizations movement. I don't know if you came by that. People trying to do Teal and all of this and just getting overwhelmed with the complexity and learning everything. Because I think it's just too much to, within the context of just one organization, implement a whole new way of working. So my goal is to start a venture family this fall of a group of companies working on software for the regenerative society, the OS for the regenerative society, with the goal of having three legs to this stool. One is a big vision and a powerful go-to-market sales communications capability with the vision of building a regenerative OS for and getting it into the hands and lives of 1 billion people. By OS, I mean a group, not like D1 software that everybody uses, but a group of interoperable software using open standards that together constitutes a regenerative society OS. So I want to start a venture family of 5 to 7. We'll see. I don't think you can have much more than that to start a family. One of these will be coherence, and we can talk much more about how coherence fits into this. And then talking to others with the goal of the venture family fundraises together, has mutual support, creates interoperable software, and so on and so forth. So for now, the working name is The Forge, and it has three legs. One is the big vision of go-to-market for getting this into the hands of 1 billion humans. Two is having a strong, pragmatic, effective, regenerative fundraising capability and path. So if you want to go to 1 billion people, you really need a scaling path to get to serious amounts of fundraising. And the third one being of building software and working in a way which brings together, are you familiar with spiral dynamics, integral theory? So bringing together, operating at the turquoise level, regeneration, building software that enables, that's the regenerative society OS, building that software that enables this, but also very much practicing and living this, figuring it out through action learning.
Hmm. I think this last point is, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I've been on a similar path as well. I didn't go into that explanation, but especially during this past 5 years since we closed our physical spaces, we've run, I don't know, dozens of different research inquiries, I suppose we could call that, in terms of, what comes first? Is it the human behavior, and then we model the technology around that? That's personally what I believe. We need to kind of have a kind of template of successful interaction in real life between people, and then have the technology shape around that. If we do it the other way around, that the technology is determining our behavior and we have to shape ourselves around that, it doesn't seem to work. So we've done a lot of work with indigenous people. We worked with Oren Lyons, who's the kind of faith keeper of Turtle Island, which is North America. He's the first person that brought, and the only person that brought all indigenous people in the world to the UN. We worked with him for 3 years on kind of prototyping different, understanding, more than prototyping, understanding what are these kind of indigenous traditions, how do they resolve conflicts, how do they resolve problems, how are their rituals actually forms of technology that we might also kind of learn from. So in our own rituals,
Are you familiar with the term psychotechnology?
Well, not that one specifically, but for sure, I
Is
know
it
I can get what it means. Psycho Cybernetics and whatnot is one of my favorite books, actually. So I think it's the same kind of servo mechanism that our brain is working in, that it needs to have, it needs to be fed information that actually comes from something beyond the mind, let's say. So I think that this kind of heart first approach to togetherness is really what needs to happen. And I can share quite a bit of information with you on that side. And then how, what are the kind of processes even for onboarding, with Planeteer, with so many different groups. I've been working with Yoscha and with Janai and others to try to deepen this process, because when you come into a community, especially one that's online, and you don't go through any kind of initiation, then it doesn't get tight enough. You don't love the other people, then you're not serving anything that you can actually sense that's bigger than yourself. So these are the great things that you can do when you're physically present with others, especially over the course of years and trials and experiments. This is our Love Mafia. We've grown to, let's say, 2,000 some people. But beyond that, there's a core group of around 80 or 100 that are truly working together as a way of being. So in all the trainings, as an example, we do with corporations, we don't hire any of our people. We actually do this kind of sharing. And that sharing then begins to expand in different ways that you can't even anticipate from the beginning. So anyway, the technology that ultimately needs to develop this OS, I think that everybody that's in this work comes to this place, that we need an operating system for this. Because without that, then we're just stuck with the physical, gatherings that hunter-gatherers used to have, let's say. So what separates us, from those that have done this, in previous generations or in the past? So how to bring technology into this is really a very delicate issue. So this issue of having a crystal twin, a kind of digital version of ourselves, which brings in, of course, data sovereignty. It brings in, truly understanding how the technology works and what its role is. And there's many different dynamics to that we can talk about in more detail for sure in another meeting. But I hear where you're going with that, and we also have been researching that a lot. And I have many different things to share on that. So I also believe in collaborating and co-creating versus, being the singular person that takes this out to the world and exits. I don't have a vision of what this technology is like that. It's not an exit, you know, it's truly something that we need to build and use together, and it's not a product, it's maybe not even a company. So, you know, the form that takes is really super important, I believe. It has to have the right drivers and the right motivations behind it.
Yes. So, I mean, as a technologist, I do have a vision. And for me, the vision is it's a group of companies that build a very successful products whilst building out open protocols underneath them. So if we are able to create open protocols, which many different companies can plug into and create new and different apps, then we become much more resilient, because even if one of the companies within the thing gets captured by the consumerist capitalist system or whatever, we have open protocols and the ecosystem will continue even as that company gets captured by Palantir or Control or whatever. So I see building out open standards, open APIs as the path to building resilience. And we can see this in the Linux ecosystem, where version after version of the thing gets sucked into some kind of a commercial entity. And this already happened to me like two or three times in this project, which I'm supporting for 15 years. We're using free software, and then some company bought it, sucked it up, and suddenly it's paid. You know, it's a pain in the ass, but we shift to a new free version and we continue, right? But yeah, I mean, it's my space for sure. It needs to be figured out. And what the hell does it mean to bake turquoise or regeneration into collaboration? It's the start of the conversation, but I think it's a very important conversation. I recently came by, and I need to study them more, but a video about Palantir. You know Palantir?
Yeah.
And they're very clear. They were like, we can't be bothered to dominate democracy. It's a pain in the ass. We're just going to dominate the technology stack and control this society that way. Right? And I think of course, their goals are, I think, completely off, and the direction they want to take society. But I think their analysis is that who controls technology will control society going forward is spot on.
I think so as well. I think there's some challenges. If you look at the Airbnb model, if you look at the Uber model that have actually also followed that, you know, that you kind of jump in first and just with a huge stockpile of money into an environment where the end game will be that, you know, you had to spend a lot to get there, but you did it because you revolutionized society in a way. You know, there's some unintended consequences that we can't, or negative externalities that we can't foresee from the beginning. So if you look at all the problems that those companies have had using that kind of model, and I'm not suggesting, of course, that, you know, you'd throw billions to make a regenerative model, you know, become the world's, you know, number one and only option on that side, but it can be an effective strategy. But how it would work with something like this is, you know, it's an interesting, I don't know, theoretical possibility. I don't know. You know, so, you know, how to motivate people to use, you know, without having it pushed into their face, so to speak. And, you know, and how to even have a more of a grassroots kind of adaptation process. You know, for me, one of my dreams having this kind of common unity platform is that, I don't know, maybe not the next election, but the next election down the road, if everybody has this software that they're using for true collaboration and for truly almost like a parallel society in a sense, behaving in a completely different way. If we teach each other how to hack the system, you know, in the next elections, the people from this environment could become candidates for the election, completely, you know, hijack the whole the system of the world and retake it over. So I don't know. There's some interesting possibilities that come from this actually.
So I think and it's good that you mentioned this. I need to add it to my thing. I really believe that the only path forward, I mean, these things have to be commercially successful in order to achieve scale. There's not enough change makers and they don't have enough money to grow a big company on just giving tools for change makers. But what I believe is that we can build dual purpose tools which means they're useful to corporates or startups. However, because corporates and startups are closed by default, not collaborative by default, the benefits that they will receive will be modest, whilst in a open collective intelligence ecosystem, things will really, really accelerate. But I do believe that we need to build tools which are useful in the standard commercial space as well, because without that, it will be very hard to get significant funding. And we need the significant funding in order to build the tools at a high enough level. So I have this idea, again, it's a hypothesis, of building stuff which is dual use and fundraising based on that, even though we know in the long run it's a Trojan horse and it will enable the regenerative economy to accelerate past the extractive economy.
Mm. This Trojan horse model,
So
I mean, it has many different names, but
extractive economy.
part of me loves it. I like this idea of rebellion and things like this. But then there's also a part of me that says, if this is such a pure thing that we're trying to do, why do we have to resort to manipulation and all these types of things? This is what burns me on the inside. And how to kind of have a system where we can truly be honest and pure from the beginning, that we're not propagating a corrupted copy from the beginning. I don't know. Maybe it's irresolvable. Maybe it's not doable. I don't know. But that is a place that I would love to solve.
And I would say for me, there is no pure and dirty, right? We're all humans living in the world. There's like, we know very well now how the systems got that way. Is aside from a few psychopaths and people who are truly evil, and most of those were dropped on their head or really mistreated as a child. So, they didn't come. People don't become evil from nowhere. This is the reality that we're living in. I don't mean we need to be devious, but I can just see that we can build software which will just naturally, work for both sides and make it easy for the corporate extractive side to step into a collaborative regenerative economy if and when they choose to, but give them benefits, right? If you look at it, each large company in and of itself is a collaborative ecosystem, and they're not collaborating very well internally. So, yeah, but in any case, we need to explore the path to scale, and for sure, finding ways to convert the existing mindset organizations whilst allowing the new mindset world to grow. Both things need to be done.
Yeah, definitely. We have an initiative that we've just started recently. My partner, her family company is one of the largest companies in Turkey doing road works and tunnel works and infrastructure and real estate and things like this. And they have, just as a size, they're around 12,000 people. And now they're going from the older generation to the next generation. And, we've been trying to find a way to, like you've just been describing yourself, how to transform culture and how to do these things. And it's nearly an impossibility to do something. This system is already in place, not just with that company, but with all companies of a certain scale that have grown over the course of the past, 30, 50 years, immersed in this old way of doing things. So we've started up, it's called Terra Future Labs. So it's a kind of regenerative accelerator that runs for a year, which is building the relationship between soil and technology. So we had 65 applications come in for that. 13 companies were chosen, and the companies that were chosen had to at least have issued one invoice and have a female founder or co-founder. And the projects that are coming out of that are quite amazing. So what I've set up a kind of team building process for that, to kind of bring in the people that are part of the big conglomerate, let's say, together with this new startup, and we're running it with the Turkish Entrepreneurship Foundation. So it's this kind of new hybrid culture that we've put together for that, with very conscious team building processes, and the kind of successes that are starting to emerge from that are starting to grow that project and bring more people's interest from, let's say, the main company into that. And all of a sudden there's something new to look at. And this kind of bubble is starting to grow as a result of that. And eventually, I believe, over the course of maybe a couple of years, rather than having them merge together or synthesize with one another, there's just a completely parallel system that eventually will be able to handle most of the work of the old company. So it's it's an interesting kind of thing. It takes time. It's not an immediate thing, but I just wanted to share that one initiative. I can share some information with you guys to take a look at it as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, look, no dinosaur woke up one morning and went, "Oh shit, I'm a bird," right? It's not how it works.
No.
At the same time, looking back at history, the last 200-300 years of history, I have no appetite for violent revolution or even non-violent revolution, and it's proven that actually revolutions don't really do system change. They do
No.
regime change, but you end up with some other kind of, even Russia, like, oh, when socialist, well, it's a different kind of bureaucratic dictatorship, right? Was it really so different from the Tsar? And similarly, so I love this. Do you know the term exaptation?
No.
It's a very interesting term from biology worth knowing. You know this thing between your mouth, in your mouth, tongue?
Sure.
It wasn't put there for us to talk. It senses taste. It's the first thing you put something in your mouth, really bitter, maybe poisonous, don't eat, other things like that. And then nature said, oh, there's this thing. It can kind of control the flow of air. That's useful. And here we are speaking, right? So nature is full of things like this, of taking things which are out there and using them for new and novel uses. So I don't have a concrete plan, but I love this concept. And can we do it in such a way that rather than fighting, overthrowing, or even waiting to die, can we exact parts of the current system so that over time, slowly, like you said, it transforms into the new, but not in a violent way or other way. So it's an idea. I don't know what it means in practice, but I love this idea of, rather than fighting, just through gentle love, patience, and huge amount of wisdom and intelligence, creating things which enable those organizations that can transform to transform, and those who can't, well,
they'll just die and wither. I think that that's what's happening. Yeah. So one of the things that we also do, like after doing, I don't know, thousands of different trainings, and we have 150 different training programs for transformation for companies, we've also, over the past couple, I don't know, months since the kids left, kind of gone through our own soul searching and said, what do we really want to do, and what is the best process and best practice that we found that we would really like to go much deeper in. And that's kind of led to a couple of different things, but the main approach is to kind of start these pockets of newness within companies, at a scale that you have maybe 10 or 15 people from the organization starting to work in a different way. And our kind of work in terms of training has become mentorship and advisory and, let's say, some kind of consultancy that we sit during that process within the company to coach them. Here your communication is going wrong. Here you didn't kind of apply this from the learnings that we offered you during this session. So to kind of have like some kind of watchdog, it's the wrong word, but this kind of participatory, ongoing participation in the transformation, and to kind of create that pocket of trust that these 15 people, as they slowly start to see that these methodologies start to work, they shape their teams better, they get, they employ people in a different way, and that starts to lead to change from within. So the expectation is not that everybody changes at the same time. There's no possibility of doing that. So, you change with those who are ready. You start small in a way that, you can afford to fail. And then that starts to have this really positive spillover effect as some successes come into the story. So this is the most effective way so far that we've found to be able to do that. So going back to your software story, if we can get those teams working in a different way where they actually are starting to prototype this software, within that working environment, and they start to see the effects, they also then become, a kind of, sounding board, and they have a kind of contributory effect that they can bring into the design of that, to template it. If this, it might be white labeled, that every company has their own, version of this for security reasons, but like you said, there's this kind of core that remains open source and applicable to everybody, that then can be customized for the particular secrets that company might be holding, or whatever the case is. So I think that there's many different ways to look at it, and what you mentioned to me about your approach sounds very much in line with what I also believe to be the case. So if we can collaborate on the development of this, I'm very open to sharing what we've come across so far. Seems to me like you are the same. So, how we can do it together is the only way forward, really. You can't do it by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We're here very much searching for still finding the others and finding the right people to do it with. And yeah, would really love to work on it together. I really think I'm super excited. I've been dreaming for an AI team coach for 10 years. Really effectively ever since I discovered Teal and those things because what you're saying, right, it's amazing work with the companies that you can and you provide them advice. And that's beautiful, but it's not scalable, right? It's not financially possible to roll out to thousands or millions of organizations. But if we can get the AI to do that, we can. And I'm in no way, shape, or form saying that the AI will be better than you, but the AI will be much, much cheaper than you, right? So if we can get 80%, 70% even of the benefit for, I don't know, the cost of a few dollars or a few tens of dollars a month, that will be hugely transformational. Also, the other thing is the AI coach is always there. When you, based on normal human realities and limitations, if you're working with a company, you're there when you're there. You have some availability outside of that, but you're not available 24/7. And AI is there 24/7. So yeah, I very much see the AI team coach to enable people to work better as a key part of the ecosystem of what we need to build.
I think there's some delicacies there, having a kind of robot overlord that is determining your behavior and saying do this, do that. It has to be done with such nuance that it doesn't, shake the foundation of who we are as humans. And I think that we need to keep organic life and human life, I'm not saying superior, but at the correct level. AI is beautiful. It can do all kinds of stuff that we shouldn't be doing. But if it starts to substitute our own humanness, that we are somehow becoming more mechanized because, we just accept that to be the way. This is already what social media has done, and AI pushes us also in this direction. But, how can be, the nuance of that is super important. And I think that this is a design issue. How can it can be there to facilitate and to kind of sense blind spots and, kind of make sure that something's not falling apart. But the real work must always be human.
Yes,
I hate to interrupt you. I have to go. I have another call, okay? And
okay, yeah, wow, it's 1 o'clock already. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex.
Sure.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah. Talk soon. All right, bye.
I don't know. So yes, of course. At the same time, it's inevitable. Every time a new technology comes in, it puts up a mirror to us and forces us to rethink of what being human is, right? By the way, do you know where the term Luddite comes from? I didn't know until recently.
Well, this is from the revolution in Yorkshire in the UK, basically. Those who were afraid of the I forget exactly the machine, but the textile machines who thought that they were
exactly. That's the story. But why Luddite? What does the name come from? As it turns out, it's the name of Mr. Ludd, who was the leader of the movement. Historical factor. So that was a huge rethinking and re-examining of what the hell does it mean to be human. So this is not in any way to negate what you say, but it's more than nuance. There's a fundamental understanding, rethinking of like, okay, what does it mean to be human? How do we work with our technology? It's been that way from the start. And what I mean by coach, it's like a coach, a mentor, right? It's not one that's measuring your performance, but I can easily see a team coach which is like, oh, I detected a lot of tension in your last 3 meetings. I've seen 1,337 other teams like this, and 956 times out of that, it's resulted in severe conflict. Here's a book you could read. Here's a course that you could take. Or maybe would you like me to book you a communications consultant to host a workshop for your team? Just press the button here and I'll connect you with the right human, right knowledge. But the work, of course, the relational work needs to be done by the people. I fully agree with that. But it can really help us to pinpoint and identify what is the work that needs to be done.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. As long as the AI model that it's also running on is not something that is coming from, I don't know, OpenAI or the kind of classical sources of that. So I think that we need to create and train AI models with honest data, not just big data. And there's a revolution there that also needs to take place, which we've been working on for some time now as well. So, you know, the AI that we're currently seeing is not necessarily the way AI, like LLM models, have come to their end, you know. So the idea of bringing more rich and honest data, as long as we know that it's ours and we're not feeding the beast, so to say, we'll behave very differently with that. So there's been quite a few experiments we've been running on that side that, you know, the data sizes and the kind of the data mining, so to speak, is actually something that's actually self-contained within the system. So this has the chance to kind of grow in a completely different way also. So there's many different aspects to talk about there as well, which we can go in deeper. But I think
I fully agree with you, and you've just restated what is my core thesis: is we better fucking do this with intention and with our ideology, because the other side is doing it with its own extractive capitalist default mode game ideology. And yeah, the war of the ideologies is going to move to software now from the media and newspapers and stuff like this.
I think it's already happened. You know, it's not going back. And you know, ChatGPT, OpenAI has just announced a home device being done by Johnny Ive, who was the designer of the iPhone and whatnot. I don't know if you saw this, but you know, the idea that ChatGPT is now going to be a hardware device that's going to be in your home by the end of the year, that you're going to talk to, and it's going to be part of your daily activities and so on and so forth. You know, that's going to be such a game changer that many of these, you know, nuanced ideas that we're talking about now that seem outlandish and far-fetched will actually already be just part of the regular relationship that you have with your AI. So I think that the revolution that we need to make is one that is really truly focused on us reclaiming access to an understanding of this technology, where we have our own AI that is personally owned by us. So the blockchain aspect and the kind of data security aspects that nobody could solve right now because they're too complicated. You know, AI can help with those, but as long as it's our AI. So, you know, in our village, as an example, we imagine having our own servers there that are stored there, that we're not even having to be part of, you know, the cloud at all. And, you know, people actually are making their own AI units and hardware devices also. This becomes part of your lifestyle arsenal. So to know how to do that. So these are, I think, really quite important aspects of it, that we're not just, you know, to the external world, you know, giving away our power constantly. So we need to understand what is the potential of this technology and bring it into our own realm. And, you know, it's quite easy now, you know, with a few chips and, you know, some storage devices to actually make your own AI. And I've been working on tinkering around with these types of things also for some time. And I think that is part of the village, having workshops and ateliers and, you know, maybe even a kind of processing plant, you know, to help with these types of things. It gives us the chance to do something radically different that doesn't rely on this old system at all.
Yeah. I mean, clearly there's many parts of the equation to work on, from building, you know, the Horizon H1, H2, H3 Horizon framework.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting one, right? For what is it like doing the H1 is improving the current system, H2 is doing transition, and H3 is the radically new. We need innovation at all of those levels. All right, so
one just final point, you know, the amount of, you know, crazy stuff we've been through here in Turkey over the past, you know, well, since I've been here, really. I mean, it's always been, you know, at least 100% inflation, you know, government that is unstable, or then fascist, or then you have earthquakes, and God knows, we've been through so many different things here. And, you know, the kind of net consequence of that is that it pushes you farther into the future the whole time, because as the system around you completely dismantles, you know, you can't rely on that system anymore. And I think the rest of the world is, you know, slowly starting to open its eyes to that possibility. And I personally don't see that you're never going to go back to the state of normalcy that we once expected. So it really requires us to take control into our own hands. You know, it's a really powerful thing that not everybody fully understands, but it goes as radical as making your own technologies and, you know, becoming a master at those. And this is the kind of, I'm not saying it's a Mad Max scenario or something like this. I think that world will go on, but, you know, we need to get out of the matrix and to kind of reclaim our ability to sense the difference between true and false and, you know, what is right and wrong. These are skills that we need to cultivate, you know, through our daily behaviors and activities and our relationship with technology that, you know, goes beyond simply using one software or another. It means almost kind of, you know, even like a car, you know, if you're from the 70s, I guess, as well. So we used to fix the brakes and the engines and change all the oil, no problem. And, you know, you'd tinker around. But now you open up a new car and you don't even know where to begin. You just close it and say, okay, I'm taking it to the garage or whatever. So, you know, as long as if we're living like that, you know, especially with technology, which is so pervasive in our life, I think we're on the wrong path. So we need to find ways to make it approachable, you know, and really, I don't know, personally, I make a lot of stuff with my AI. I just made a really interesting music kind of vibrational studio with my AI. I don't code, but we did it in Python. I did it over last weekend. I'll send it to you. It's amazing. So it solved a lot of my problems for my music production just by making an app with my AI. And it was so fun. And it works. So I don't know, I kind of imagine that we have that ability in the future to kind of even customize our own AIs and work with them in a way that, you know, if it's your right hand and you're so reliant on it, you better know how to use it really well, you know. So that opens up a completely different conversation, I think.
Yes, and also I see this at all levels. So each team will have its own customized AI organization, each country. We're already seeing this, right? And they're going to be, AIs are going to become more and more ideological and political as they become more and integral to what we're doing.
Yeah, it's so censored. It's incredible. I don't know if you follow that, but like the Turkish censor on AI is extremely debilitating. Every country that you do a research on AI gives you a different answer, customized to the local context. So you can kind of still find ways to hack yourself around that. But even if you're coming with the VPN, it has a kind of filter for a VPN. So we don't actually have objective, honest AI anymore at all. It's already been.
I mean, there is. So this whole idea of anything being objective is or being unbiased, right? Objective is one thing, but being unbiased is a whole separate conversation. So amazing. I mean, for me, my invitations would be, first and foremost, we're doing the big coherence event in the fall around creating dialogue and bringing together organizations working in this space into dialogue. I don't know how much Alex explained to you about the coherence concept.
Not too much, but I've been following it from the other groups, so I'll take a more detailed look at that for sure.
Yeah, so basically, you know, a key area where I've been trying to innovate is how we bring people together. I've organized the gathering. Would love to see if maybe, you know, people could be interested in bringing it to Turkey. It's you can think of it as an intersection of a festival, a conference, and a trade show. So coming together in nature, but having these conversations that matter and connecting with the intention of connecting for action and growing the collaborative ecosystem. So that's a physical event. And then Coherence is a online format, again, of finding a way to connect people for action. You know, the way we approach technology is always we take what we used to do before and then we just do it in digital form. It was until very recently that people would email you a PDF, say, print this out, sign it, scan it, and send it back to me, right? You know, it's like, is it a digital workflow? I don't even know anymore, right? But we just mimic what we did before. And similarly with how we gather online, we're like, oh, we have conference, we know conference, one person speaks, everybody else listens. Great, we'll just do the same thing online. And it's actually not a useful format online because I can just watch a YouTube video, send me the YouTube video. What I want to do is interact with people and I'm synchronously live with people. And whilst in a conference, having 1,000 conversations is not possible, doing it online entirely is. Plus with AI to create collective intelligence out of it, to help you find the conversations and parts of conversations which are relevant to you, suddenly having 1,000 conversations recording and published is actually quite useful. So that's the coherence idea of just inviting people, practitioners working in the space, project leaders, companies, to have conversations about what they're working on, what their needs are. I really hope to bring in investors as well. So there's a conversation on how do we drive money and resources into this ecosystem. So that's the coherence idea. And we're starting in July, we're starting a software startup to build the software and a event to run a big coherence event in the fall, and really ideally bring into conversation people around the world in many languages around this topic of which I'm kind of working tagline, wise AI and conscious collaboration technology. But it's a bit clunky and hopefully somebody will come up with something better. So we'd really love to invite you to be part of the coherence event. We'll share the things around the software startup. I don't know how it connects. And then out of this, like I said, I want to build the Forge venture family of organizations working on software, which together comes as the regenerative society OS.
Okay, well, there's definitely a lot of parallel fields there. So, I mean, with pleasure. Like I said, I don't think any of these are things we can build alone. And
yeah, I mean, these are all ideas and invitations to make them happen.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
How about you? And of course, if you would like to have a conversation around the village, around that, any way that I can contribute moving your vision forward, would love that. How about you from your side? How do you think I could support and be of service to what you're doing?
Well, I think that, I don't know, from what you're describing in the software space, you know, this is also what I'm working on. And like I mentioned, I have this commonunity.com with a kind of platform space that I really want to build this up. And I've got support from all the different communities that we've co-founded as well. And many of them are now communities of practice. So they're not just kind of communities trying to figure out what they're doing, but we've, you know, in one community, we wrote a book together last year as an example with 26 of our members, which is now on Amazon and other things like this. So that's just one small example of some of the things that in fact are starting to result in action rather than just holding space and talking. So there's many examples like that we're working on, like I said. So from that, what I would, and I don't know if you know House of Beautiful Business, you know, we're also kind of doing that together since the beginning with them, let's say, but we're having the event here in Turkey next month. And a bunch of different other, you know, physical events that we've held hundreds over the course of the years that we've been doing this, let's say. So your coherence event, for sure, I'd love to talk about that with you as well. But on the software side specifically, I think that, you know, there we're speaking with Yosha, and there's of course Ruben, who's got his own software development company too. And I see so many different, you know, people trying to do the same thing there that I'm not really sure, number one, who to spend time with the most. And, you know, trust is another issue, let's say, but who's coming into this most sincerely is really important for me. You know, we put in a lot of time and a lot of money to get to this stage to really fully understand these things, not with the expectation that we were investing into it. We just, that's what life showed us, that we were into it, you know, without realizing, you know, how deep the issue is, let's say. So, you know, how to move forward together with somebody in trust, in sincerity, and, you know, in the right alignment is what I kind of feel missing in many of these spaces. You know, a lot of people are coming into this for the first time and saying, oh, that's a great idea, but they don't have a community, they haven't done the work of community, they haven't understood the nuances of these things. So this frightens me a little bit sometimes. So I don't know, I would love to chat with you more and see, you know, where you are. I can tell from our relationships in the different communities that you've been on this path, obviously, for a long time as well. So
well, we're the same age, so well, I turned 50.
That says something.
So, and yeah, I mean, for sure, it means that we have somewhat of a different perspective. Age being one thing, but also the way we have observed the ecosystem, right? We saw the internet starting, we saw the smartphones starting, right? So it's a different perspective that from someone who was born into a internet present world. And of course, every perspective, every lens has its own value, but it is different.
I agree with that. So I think our role as Generation X in that sense, is something that I always keep very, very close to myself, because like it or not, it gives you a different perspective to know that there's another world outside of technology, which we can never escape from. Technology is here today. Who knows where it is? Solar flare might destroy everything. And then if we don't know anything about this whole human side, then we're truly screwed. So
Exactly. I always like to say, if you don't believe that you have a physical body, go visit the founder of Silk Road in jail, say hello to him, and he will tell you what the difference between digital and physical is.
yes, there you go. Okay, Victor, thank you so much. It was a great conversation. I'm really thankful to get to know you a little bit better, and I'm looking forward to our next chats.
All right, great. Are we connected? I'll ask Alex to connect us, and then we can frame some of it.
All right.
Would it be okay to post this conversation from today, publish it? What do you think?
Yeah, I leave that up to you. You're the one that has the Fathom up there, so it's all cool.
Well, no, I mean, we're both participants. Anyways, if it's generally okay, because this has been gold, and I'd love to share this story with others, I'll put it into the queue, and then you can take a look at it, make up your mind after too.
Yeah, okay, sure. I appreciate that. No problem.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
I look forward to when we get together in person. That should be the next conversation, because sometime this year we will get together in person for sure.
Okay, I look forward. You're in Portugal, right?
I'm in Portugal already. Somebody was telling me something about some event in October in Istanbul. So I will definitely, we'll figure out a way to come together. By the way, in Turkey, in Istanbul, do you know Hakan Malak?
Yeah, very well.
Okay, great. Yeah, I've been talking with him. I really love him.
Okay, great. He was working in I don't know, he got some land with a group of people, many of whom we know, but he was working on one of the projects we were working on was very close to the one he's working on in that same area, which we decided to pull out of last year. But I don't know. Now it seems like it's going to come back online, actually, so we'll see.
Wonderful.
Hakan's been great. He's a great sounding board, and he's been around in this sector also for quite some time. So I've known him for at least a good 15 years.
Wonderful. All right. Until the next time. Thank you.
Okay, Victor. Bye-bye.